Hey guys, and welcome back to another Dragon Ball Legends video. My name is D-Free, and for this video, we are going to talk about... You guys have seen it for a while now. Came out late last night. I just got in bed. I was really tired. Have been running errands all day, taking my kids to school, going to the gym, going to the store, going to the post office, all these different things. So I haven't got a chance to report on it now, and that's also why I've been pretty busy the last few days. It's just, unlike a lot of the other YouTubers, I actually have kids and other responsibilities. Anyway... So here's the deal. We're talking about the new Goku and Frieza buff. Now, please listen to what I have to say rather than going based off of other comments or title, description maybe, I don't know, thumbnail, whatever. Because I have a lot that I want to kind of mention about this. So we're going to start off by going over this and talking about the caveats and things that they mention as it pertains to this. So bear with me. I want to show you this one, I believe. Yeah, this, so it's my zoomed in screen. So they're doing the first ever balance change in like 3.5 years. Maybe there's one that I forgot. Maybe there's one I'm forgetting. But this is our first balance change in basically 3 years. Now, what does this mean? This is a really big deal. Because what happens is they have to literally, if you don't know how these work, they have to literally sit there and basically build a new character. They've got to go into the character, make sure that everything is applied, recode them, etc. Now, obviously, they have the base work already done, and maybe they could tweak a couple things when it's just a minor change, but that's really what goes into doing Zenkais and stuff like that, and that's probably part of the reason why Zenkais don't really have a lot that really happened to them. And here we have a situation where we're seeing a balance change, right? And they went away from these because they decided they weren't profitable. They would do these. Here's the deal. They would do balance changes once upon a time, long ago before Zenkais existed. They would take a list of characters, maybe like 5 or 10, I don't remember the exact number at a time, and once every other month or once every 3 months, they would say, okay, we're going to apply these effects to these characters. We're going to change their Z ability, which is something they still don't do, by the way, for Zenkais. We're going to do these other minor tweaks, and so on and so forth. And they decided it wasn't profitable, but another dirty secret about that is that those characters were not good for the most part even after that. They may see a slight resurgence for like a week, but they still wouldn't be very good. Coincidentally, when Zenkais came out, that was the exact opposite. Zenkais were characters that became the pinnacle, the peak, so far ahead of everything else that we're in this crazy power creep that started with Gohan, Zenkai, and 18 and some other characters around that time period. Purple Super Saiyan 3, I'm looking at you as well. And now we're at a point where Zenkais are like original balance changes where they're not really doing anything. They're not able to really be relevant. They're basically bench buffers, etc., etc. They're not all that great. So they decided to do a balance change for Goku and Frieza. They decided not to give Goku and Frieza a Zenkai, which, I mean, they just came out, so I'm not surprised at that. And they also decided not to give them a Plat, which I am a little bit surprised about, but that's a good thing, because that means that in the future, they are going to have an innate advantage that basically no other LF up to this point has had, and that's that they are going to get buffed 2 more times at least, through an equip and through a Zenkai, at least 2 more times. Who knows if they start giving characters second plats or whatever, you know, unique equipments. So anyway, so this is something that no other characters had. And the thing about this is that this is a big deal because characters have deserved this for a while, but I want to really draw your attention to this right here. This red text here. We knew that addressing these issues would involve taking considerable measures, so they were thoroughly discussed internally. In the end, it was decided that changes must be made in order to bring greater satisfaction to all the players who joined the anniversary celebration and acquired this character. Therefore, the decision has been made to take, and then here's the red text underlined as well, exceptional action in this singular instance to directly buff this character instead of using unique equipment or other means to strengthen it. So that means that this is such an extreme scenario because this is an anniversary celebration character that they are going out of their way this one time, they're letting you know right here, to buff this character. This is not something they intended to do. This is not something they hope to do again in the future. This is a one-time exception. Now, don't get that confused. Because at the very bottom, which I can't really show you because I got to switch over, at the very bottom, they say, regarding future LF characters, While we're still in the early stages of discussion, some means of adding unique value to Legends Limited characters, similar to Ultra abilities for Ultra characters, is currently being considered. Rest assured that any additions will be made to existing Legends Limited characters as well. More information will be announced when available. So they said that they're just now kind of starting the talks on this, but they're planning on making LF characters better. They mentioned Ultra abilities, so they may give LF characters their own version of an Ultra ability. They also mentioned they're going to retroactively add those effects into older LF characters too, so like a across-the-board buff, and that will make those LF characters all better, right? It's going to make them more akin to Zenkais, or, well, Ultra abilities are kind of sketch because team conditions and stuff, but who knows what they do for this. But anyway, they're going to technically apply a small buff to all characters, LFs, and going forward as well. So don't get it confused. I've seen people getting these two things confused. Just because they say they're going to touch LFs in the future doesn't mean they're going to buff them in this way. They're not going to sit here and buff your Vegeta and Trunks, because I know everybody, a lot of players that will want that. That doesn't mean, that's not what this means. But here's the deal. It should. It should. One of the biggest mistakes this game has ever made is introducing Zenkais. Now, here's the deal. They have found a way to make that system so vastly different than it was when it came out. Initially, Zenkais were hyper pay to win. They cost 21,000 Chrono Crystals on average through only summons. No other means. Only summons to get the character Zenkai Awakening to get their Zenkai Awakening power. Only summons, again, on average, 21,000. You didn't have those potential for high drops. What is it, like you could get up to like 1,000 with one drop? That didn't exist, right? Go back to our original Zenkai summons and stuff like that. Gohan and all these characters, Beerus, Broly, Red Goku, whoever. So it started off hyper damn pay to win on the heels of the balance changes. Like I said, although that they weren't great, the merit was that it was completely free. All you needed was the character. And not only that, they decided to put the stupid star restriction on Zenkais for 7 stars. Now they turn around about a year later and say, okay, you know what, we'll make it easier for you. We add those higher drops in. It's still only summons, but now instead of 21,000, you need 7,000, which is a huge buff. But again, still innately flawed system. And then they turn around again and say, okay, since we're going to completely neuter Zenkais, how about you guys just basically have them for free? Now, it's not completely free because, again, the star condition is still there, which I'm not really mad at that in particular, especially for these older characters getting Zenkais, because, I mean, eventually you'll get them up. Like, there's so many, like, old free summons. I'm not really worried about that. But anyway, that's still a thing for new players or mid-game players. They may be locked out of some Zenkais, but I will give them credit. They decided to make the characters free through the exchange method. It only takes a couple of weeks after they're released for them to get added there. That is a bonus. And don't get me wrong, anytime they decide that they are going to buff our characters, right? That is a bonus, because at the end of the day, this is a freaking gacha game. Your characters, they're not made to constantly get buffed and revamped and brought back to relevance. That is not the way that this game is designed. That is not what this game's intention is. The game's intention is to sell you new characters constantly, and constantly in the process, pushing down those other characters. And that's also why characters that were Zenkais becoming and being for so long so powerful was such a massive issue, and why it led to overall power creep in aggregate. And they decided to change the entire landscape by pushing everything different, making LF so incredibly strong, making Zenkais garbage, basically making them all free. There's some diamonds in the rough, some Zenkais you can use, all the qualifiers, you guys know. But anyway, so the thing is, though, if they had decided to take a more liberal approach and make it to where instead of that system entirely, they just kept with balance changes, you don't run into some of the same issues. And I genuinely, seriously question how much money does Zenkais actually make them? I really, especially after the first, like, maybe 10. How much money did Zenkais seriously make them? Giving all the restrictions, given how much it costs in the initial phase for them to consistently lower it, that tells me that they weren't making much money off of it. That's what that tells me. Maybe I'm just not, I mean, that's just not my business and I'm not understanding the philosophy right. It tells me they weren't making much money. So instead of that, they were better off keeping balance changes. So now we're coming full circle to a time period. I went through the whole Zenkai thing because it's on the same wavelength of giving characters buffs. And again, anytime we get any buff for a character, that's a good thing. It's always a good thing because again, the game is not designed for that. And a lot of gacha games will go back and they'll revamp their characters. Don't get me wrong. But characters are not designed to last forever. That's the point. They're not going to last forever. They're not going to be relevant 5 years later. That's just not how games are, right? Again, the core function in these games is to constantly sell you new characters. The sooner you understand that, the better off you'll be. Anyway, moving on. By the way, that also applies to equips. It's good that we get unique equips, even though they're terrible resource drains for erasers and stuff. Energy, terrible. Don't get me wrong. Still good that they exist, but terrible resource drains. So we're now in a time period where we got all these stupid ultras that are ridiculously strong. And this is all, again, a product of what happened to the game with Zenkais. It all treks back to Zenkais because we get basically Meta 2.0 with Zenkais and stuff like that. And along the way, there are other characters that release like Purple Broly and Red Zamasu and so on and so on. Whatever. Green Bardock, whatever. There's always been characters and that have been outlier characters that have always been oppressively strong. That's not the point. We jumped so heavily with Gohan and his batch of Zenkais that came out around his time period that LFs were undervalued. People would literally say, why would we even summon for these characters, right? Why would we even summon? Especially at a low star level. So then they flip the script and ultras were not great, right? Gogeta comes out as the first summonable ultra. He's really good. And then he's usurped by Beast Gohan. And Beast Gohan basically is probably like more like Meta 4.0 with Beast Gohan. But Beast Gohan creates basically in this discussion Meta 3.0. And now we have a situation where Ultras are so oppressively strong. The new ones, Rose, all the three at the bottom. Gogeta's in that discussion too. But they're so strong that your new LF characters cannot compete. Do you know how bad of a look it is? Do you know how bad of a look it is for this game, which is doing great? This game is not about to close. This game is doing phenomenal. This game has made over $1 billion. This game is hyper successful. Don't get me wrong, hyper successful. If anybody tells you this game is anything but successful, they're stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. The game has bad practices like every other gacha game on the market, but the game is hyper successful and has a very dedicated player base that loves to see the game succeed and do well, right? But it is a terrible look to release a brand new shiny anniversary headliner that looks this good, by the way, best animations in the game in my opinion, and have them be underwhelming. Do you guys remember when I did a video like 2 weeks ago and I said, hey, are Goku and Frieza underwhelming to you? And people were like, yeah, they're not. Some people were like, no, they're the best in the game. And I'm like, okay, that's a bit of a stretch, right? Like I said, ultras are better. All of them were better. All the good ultras were better. Anyway, they had fun mechanics, they're good. And so now this is how you know that I was on the right wavelength and the people that were saying otherwise were on the right wavelength, because they are literally seeing this and saying, okay, we need to buff them. It's not just about the reception online, it's also the data on the back end. They're seeing the data from players using this character and how they're performing versus the field. And unfortunately, the field is an ultra that's way better in every damn match. So the response was to buff this character, grant them basically a one-time exception, which is great for everybody that owns this character, by the way. So if you don't own them, definitely go get them, because they're now one of the best characters in the game, if not the literal best character for the record. They decided to go ahead and buff them so massively, but this extends out to all the other characters that have been released as LFs in Meta 3.0. They are literally, I don't care who they are, Beast Gohan, Android 17, I don't care who it is. Those guys are solid, they can compete, but then you struggle with some of the other ones like Vegeta and Trunks, Goku and Vegeta that just came out, the Buu Saga ones. There are more LFs like them too, the LFUY Goku, that while each of them has their own fun gimmicks, they all have different things like revive or preparation that are solid. Those characters needed this damn treatment. They need this treatment. right? They needed this treatment. Again, it's a terrible look, but really they needed this treatment before this character did, and I understand the thought process for making this character get this, but if that's the case, if this is what you're at, why don't you know this? Why don't you know this already in advance that this is what this is going to be? I don't understand why they don't know this already. And the thing is, again, they're seeing the data for how this character is performing, but make no mistake, they're seeing that same data for some of these other characters that are very, very underwhelming, that were headliner characters and were premium characters. Like Ultra Broly, I think, probably should have been better than he was, right? Other characters, even Ultras like Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken, they're seeing the usage data for all these characters, and they don't know how to remedy the situation. You shouldn't need to buff your characters, but if you need to buff your characters, you need to make it a thing that you do across the board. It can't just be a one-time thing because your whales are mad that their freaking shiny Ultra, or excuse me, shiny LF from the anniversary isn't up to par with the freaking Ultras in the game, despite the fact you've brought back 2 of the best Ultras in a 2-week time span. Dude, is Rose still in the buff? Is he still in the boost system? I think he is. God damn it, they brought him back and he's still in boost. I don't know, man. I feel like I started trekking along multiple paths because there's so much in my mind about this. I could really keep going. Let's summarize. I don't think there's anything wrong with them buffing characters. Whether it's through the old style balance changes, which is seeing a slight resurgence with this Goku and Frieza thing. And look how they're trying to pay us off, by the way, by giving us CC. That's the only reason CC's here. They say, oh, thank you, but it's to quell people being upset about this. Again, I understand why people would be, but I don't think you really should, for the record, personally. There's no problem with equips or regular Zenkais, though they require resources or other means. It's good, because characters are not supposed to last forever. Long story short. I don't, however, like this text. We're doing this as a one-time thing, because basically they're a celebration character. I don't like the fact that other celebration characters, like we just came off a celebration, Goku and Vegeta, should have had this treatment and should get this treatment, but probably won't get this treatment because of this and their unwillingness to do this more often. Because if that's the case, they should do this more often. This whole little line here, I don't remember how I started talking about how they have to rebuild the character, and I was like, but as a consumer, I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I'm spending money on the game. I don't care about that, you know? So I don't really agree with this sentiment that it's a one-time exception and they really point it out for you so you don't expect it again. The community will love this. You don't got to pay us every time. I would love to CC, don't get me wrong, but you don't got to do that. Just make our characters better, especially if they're a new character. I also think it's a terrible look that this character wasn't just good enough in the first place. Due to lack of survivability, this character is often defeated early on in battles. Character lacks in combo abilities while Goku is the active character. These are all things, by the way, we noticed instantly. In that video I talked about earlier, I was like, yeah, Goku doesn't have any field presence. Goku doesn't do a thing. Like, he comes in and does a lot of damage, but there's not Frieza's just better. Frieza does everything. Goku can't really get a combo going. He ain't got no blast armor. It's just and then they get two-shot by everything. They release Jiren as well, which is a huge mistake, releasing him alongside these guys. And it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, this is so obviously, and it's almost like they didn't even bother testing this. They just put it out there, right? Which is unfortunate, very unfortunate. It's a bad look to have to do this for a celebration character in the middle of the celebration. Again, if you don't own them, go get them, because they're now one of the best characters in the game. They were already like top 10, regardless of the issues, I think. But like this, they went so far here. I really, from here on, want to see them get a handle on this going forward. Not that they'll do this again. I don't want to see any more situations where the character is not properly balanced. For good or bad. I don't want to see a character be underpowered relative to the field. And this change was made with Ultras in mind. I don't care what they say or how they try to cutify it or anything like that, make it cute. I don't care. And if that's the way we're going, then the gap between these new LFs and Ultras needs to be smaller. I don't want to see 10 times better ultras coming out as a result of this either. Because that's also a possibility. Is that when it comes time to power creep this character in like 4, 5, 6 months, that means that the good lord. Could you imagine this 4, 5, 6 months from now with all the new current ultras like Rose and stuff getting power crept? Oh my god. Oh my god, I'm terrified. So yeah, like if anybody's listening to this, I'll probably just send this video to Toshi as well and tell him to skip to the summary part. I think that in conclusion, this game has always had disgusting power creep issues. And I think that they would be better served if they managed this better, if they tested it better. I think that they really should have just always done this. Should have never stopped this. I'm sure a lot of you guys agree with this. And things would have been better off probably. I don't know. It's an alternate timeline. So there's a few other things I could say. We're going to wrap there. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think. Sorry I started yelling at you. RIP headphone users. I'll see you next time.